don't mind, first thing, how many of you guys got to fill out the intuitive eating survey? You would be very biased after hearing this presentation, so that's why I wanted you guys to do it beforehand. First thing I'm going to have you guys do is get up and move. So I don't know how many of you guys read the implicit bias presentation we had a couple weeks ago. So you might recognize this. I thought it was good. The whole strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree thing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you guys a statement. We'll start, there's just two of them. And what I want you to do is decide whether you strongly agree, whether you feel neutral about it, you disagree, or you strongly disagree with the statement. And I need you to commit to it. So I want you to stand up, meander your way around the room, and go to the area that you feel you want to stand. Sound good? Okay. So first question is,
Maybe I'm just disagreeing.
most people who lose weight regain it. Go ahead. The question again is, most people who lose weight regain it. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? Or do you not know? Do you feel You're out.
Yeah, I think it's gonna work.
So let me know when you're in. Are you guys all in your spots? Okay. So I'm going to do, can I get your guys' attention? It's a little room's crowded, so. So what I'd like to do is sample from some of the different groups why you feel like you did. Would anyone like to share why they agree, disagree, or they feel neutral about it? LaToya.
So, this is my life cycle. So, you lose weight and then gain weight. And then I also think about just fitness programs in general. They usually talk about maybe 3 months, 4 months, and then you work really hard to just kind of do that, and then you don't really consider what do I do after that, and then you kind of it's not sustainable.
Sure.
This workouts.
Sure. Would anyone else like to share? Maybe from a different group. Sophie, why would you like to share?
That's what I learned from 550 walk.
Scientific evidence. Perfect answer. There's a lot of that I'll share with you too, but I like to hear that from the biological aspect as well. Love it. Now, Sophie, why didn't you pick strongly agree, if you mind sharing?
Well, I feel like some people,
Yeah.
they stick to certain diets and keep exercising that they can still maintain it.
They can maintain it.
It's not like that extreme.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. What about somebody from neutral over here? Would somebody over neutral mind sharing? Yeah.
I've seen people lose weight and not regain it, and I've seen people that have lost weight and regain it. And
Kind of
I
both
think
ways.
it's very individual.
Sure. Okay. Yep. And are you in disagree?
I'm in disagree,
Tell me
yeah.
why you disagree.
Yeah, similar to what she said, I didn't take Sophie's class or the class that Sophie was in, so there might not be scientific proof for this. But yeah, I know people who have lost weight, and I think personally it's a matter of commitment and just staying true to, the lifestyle changes that you've developed in order to lose the weight.
Okay.
I feel like there's a common misconception that if someone's following a diet, once the diet is completed, whether that be in a month or 3 months, that they can just go back to eating regular things, and obviously that's when they'll regain the weight.
Sure.
I just think it's a commitment to your habits and your eating lifestyles.
Sure. Okay. I can understand that. Does anyone else want to share? I'm going to have you guys stand if you don't mind, because I'm probably sitting all day, and I'm going to explain to you what some of the research says about this. How many of you guys watched The Biggest Loser? Okay. So I'm going to read some of these statistics because they're kind of specific. But they did a study after The Biggest Loser. It was published in the Journal of Obesity, so a really high-impact journal, May 2016. The study was funded by the NIH and NIDDK, National Institute of Digestive Kidney Diseases, thank you. So not industry biased. 14 of the 16 people from this season participated. So what we saw is that their weight loss averaged 128 pounds. And these are short seasons, so not that long. It's interesting. It's very interesting. So what we saw is that their RMR decreased, so we can see this here, so their resting metabolic rate decreased by an average of 610 calories per day.
Wow.
610. And we can see in this graph here that it kind of went down, and very few people, we had a couple here that went back up, but very few people went back up. We can also see after 6 years, an average of 71 pounds of lost weight was regained. Okay, so of those 128, over half was regained for most people. We can see some of these people here are actually above where they started at the beginning. Some people are below, but almost everybody is creeping up towards 0, which was their baseline. So the metabolic adaptation, the overall metabolic adaptation was 500 calories under where they started.
Wow.
And what we saw is that the more weight they lost, the more their metabolic rate decreased. So that, I thought this speaks for itself. This is pretty interesting. And I see what you're saying too. I mean, of course, there are people who keep weight off that they lose, but overwhelmingly, and others, this is an extreme example, obviously. Obviously, Biggest Loser is very extreme, but other research supports this. So, interesting, food for thought. Let's move on here to the next question. This one is going to be sticky, but I just want to hear what you guys have to say. If a person is overweight, they would be healthier if they lost weight. Pick your...
I am going to go. I happen to know. I know a lot of sir.
People throw away my trash. People can get up there.
I'm gonna stand this thing
I have 2 movies.
Yeah.
You ever seen cereal?
No.
It's not just cereal.
A lot more controls on this one. I did see that one. So they
The cereal
You
people
guys
eat
all in your
it that
categories?
much.
Okay. Let me get your attention back up here. So I'd like to sample from the group.
So you don't use those in
Who would like to share why they picked what they picked? Yeah.
I'm unusual because I think it depends. I think it depends on how overweight, how like if you have metabolic risk factors, and how you're categorizing overweight. Like a lot of athletes are overweight that's high numbers.
Right. Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, Johanna.
On the same vein as Charlotte, that assumes that the person is unhealthy to start with.
Sure.
That a high BMI is the only indicator of health.
Okay. So how are we defining health? We're going to get into that in a second. Yes, thank you. Would anyone from this category like to share how they felt, why they felt that way?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Again, I think it's like you're not sure if how you're measuring the overweight and if for what their function and what they're doing, it
Yeah.
can have protective factors for some people.
Yeah. Sure.
The elderly.
In the elderly. Yeah, that's an interesting one. There is research to support that. Yes.
Well, I also thought it depends on how they lost the weight too.
Okay.
I mean, that could be a very unhealthy,
Sure.
could make them unhealthier.
Yeah.
You know?
If they use an unhealthy method to get there in the first
Right,
place.
right.
Yeah. What about someone who agreed with that statement? Would like to share why they felt that way? Would anyone like to share and agree?
Really?
I mean, there's so many caveats,
Yeah.
how they lost the weight,
Sure.
what type of weight they lost, what they're doing to keep it off. But I think in general, look at BMI tied to disease effects. That
Yeah.
Many people, unless, you can be overweight and active, be healthy, but if it's,
Sure.
if we're just looking at weight, I think losing weight helps.
No research, and there is a lot of research that says that.
Amanda, I'll just say,
Yes.
I'm strongly
Oh,
disagree.
strongly, I'm
No,
sorry. I
no,
missed
it's fine.
that.
I can't agree.
Tell me why you
No, it's
strongly
fair, it's
disagree.
true, I agree, there could be many different factors.
Yeah.
You know, if you have heart disease, diabetes, whatever, but what I see in, 30 years in a hospital setting, people that come in that are underweight or malnourished, their clinical outcomes, their rates of mortality are much higher. And I would much rather treat a person who's, I don't care, 15, 20, 40 pounds overweight in a hospital setting, then their outcome is going to be much higher than if I take a person, doesn't matter the age, if they're 90 pounds and malnourished. So I think it totally depends on how many, do they smoke, do they have like heart disease. But if you just look at weight alone, I think I see a person I would much rather treat and look at a person's outcome if they have got 10, 20 pounds on them than if they are too thin and too underweight. Their mortality risk is extremely high, and their complications in a hospital setting are.
Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. Yeah, that's kind of along the lines of what Lisa was saying too, with the elderly. We see that as well. Yeah. So I'll just have you guys stand for one more minute. So I think we have to talk about how we define health. Health has a lot of aspects to it. So since 1968, for about 50 years now, the World Health Organization has defined health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. So I can tell we've got a bunch of scientists in the room. I got a lot of science answers, a lot of evidence. I love that. Evidence is great. But we also have to think as well about the mental and social well-being and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So what I want to know is why all of a sudden health equals weight. I hear from the medical community as a sole indicator, weight, you know, how much do you weigh? They don't almost even care about other factors. So in intuitive eating, there's been more than 60 studies on intuitive eating since its inception in 1995. It was coined by Evelyn Tribole, who I've been training with, and Elise Resch. And since then, it's gotten a lot of attention from the research community. So we can see that regardless of weight loss, and there's scientific measures on here too, not your little soft science measures. People who are better intuitive eaters have lower BMIs, they have lower triglycerides, higher HDL levels, so there's your science measures there, less disordered eating, less thin idealization, increased variety of foods, we all want to see that here as dietitians, increased body cue awareness, and increased interoceptive awareness. Who's heard that term before, interoceptive awareness? It's so cool. It's a really cool term that is just your ability to feel and perceive your own body cues, and that goes into the, like, hunger and fullness and things like that, which I'll talk about. Better appreciation, trust in self, enjoyment in eating, coping, well-being, self-esteem, optimism, and these have all been measured by validated measurement tools and studies. And this is regardless of weight loss. So when I look at this, someone who is a better intuitive eater and they're better in all these categories, these are pictures of health to me too. So, two sides to every coin. So, thank you for your answers. Go ahead and take your seats and we'll continue from here. So, the challenge here, I think the biggest challenge are the messages we see in the media, one of the biggest ones. How many of you guys have seen the summer messages news? Sorry. What is this?
Oh my goodness.
Never eat. Cut down the minutes coming back. I never eat at least 5 foods. Bananas. Why bananas made this list? I have no idea. Avocados. I see pictures of brown avocados. I don't really know. What else do you guys hear as the foods that you should never eat?
Watermelon.
Watermelon. What else? What else? Bread. What else do you guys hear? What do you not eat? Milk? Okay. What else? What else? Gluten. What else? Unless you're proceed. What else do you hear? Give me one more. Sugar. Potatoes. I hear, oh man, I hear everything. So it's kind of like a food fight. Cultures, diets, the internet, social media. We've got these conflicting messages, both from our external world, and then also we've got this, you know, our internal beliefs on this too, and it's totally conflicting. I hear clients tell me all the time, they come in, and I work with intuitive eating with probably most of my weight management clients now, and they tell me, I don't know how to eat anymore. I have no idea. I just hear everything, and I tell them, I totally get that. Like, you just hear so many mixed messages that, well, how do you know what to believe? So that's part of our problem that we've got here. Now, actually, the biggest problem, I think, that is, honestly, we live in a country where we are positively obsessed with being thin. And I think this is the biggest challenge we've got to all of this. Culture tells us that thin is healthy. So these are 2 magazine covers, women's health and men's health. So again, health, fitness, health, weight, for some reason that's a direct connection there. Photoshop absolutely becomes a reality. We actually think people look like this. I don't really know probably anyone who looks like this.
I bet you just had a baby too.
But yeah. And even beauty culture. If you think about reading beauty magazines, improve your hair, improve your skin, your wardrobe, whatever it is. Improve your body. All of a sudden our body's just been wrapped up in that scheme of making money and beauty, and you can just change it like that, no problem. I know. This isn't just isolated to the media though. We've got our medical community and we've got public health messages telling us that we're in a war on obesity. We're in a war against a body type. That doesn't really make sense to me either. They tell us that we're one bite, one cookie. I hope you guys are enjoying your lunch. They tell us you're one cookie away from heart disease, diabetes, obesity, just one bite, and you're there, you're done. So what's our reaction to all this? So our reaction to all this, we blame ourselves. We blame ourselves, we overreact, we live in our heads. So dieting industry in the US in 2014 was a $61 billion industry. $61 billion. It's the only industry that works because it doesn't work. And it's the only industry that blames the consumer for failure. Blames the consumer for failure, the consumer believes it, internalizes it, and then they come back for more. They invest more because they think that they're just not self-disciplined enough. They don't have willpower. I hear that all the time. No willpower. I don't know. You know, all of these up here, we need to call them what they are. They're all diets. Every single one. To varying degrees, but they're all diets. You know, what are you going to do after your 30 days? What are you going to do after your 21-day fix? What do you do after that? They convince you that you do not have the skills to manage your own health and weight by yourself, that you need them. So then you believe it, and you come back, and you lose the weight, you regain it. Oh, I failed. Back to it again. So we make up these food rules that are nonsensical. They don't have research behind them because we're afraid. Because we don't know how else to turn. One thing I often ask people is, how much of your brain space do you actually want you need to take up? And, you know, for me, obviously, as a dietitian, it probably takes up quite a bit of my brain. But most people have jobs that have nothing to do with food and nutrition. They have hobbies, families, vacations, whatever, you name it. Eating and food is just one aspect of it. And what I see with a lot of my clients who are entrenched in one of these here is that it takes up 90% of their brain sometimes. It's all they think about. What is my next meal? What if I can't go out to eat tonight because they don't have what I want to eat? You know, and it takes up so much of their brain. So what do we do about this? I would say that we look into intuitive eating or other, what we call them our non-dieting or adaptive eating approaches. Intuitive eating, this is the intuitive eating book, again by Evelyn and Elise. They actually have a workbook that just came out too that actually takes you through the 10 principles. I just got it from my Amazon, super exciting, but it's really, really good. So I'm not going to go through all of these in detail here, but we'll read through them. So intuitive eating talks about how and why we eat much more than what we eat. Clearly we get a lot of information already on what to eat. We're like overloaded on what to eat. I think we need to talk more about how and why. So just real quick here, the 10 principles of rejecting the dieting mentality, honoring our hunger, and I'm going to give you guys all of these, so don't feel like you have to write every single one down. And actually, I'll pass them out so you guys can start. This was actually challenge the food police, respect your fullness, discover the satisfaction factor, honor your feelings without using food, respect your body, exercise and feel the difference, honor your health, practice gentle nutrition. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but we'll touch on most of them. So the first one, and probably the most important one, is reject the dieting mentality. So reject the idea that this summer, that you have to look like a supermodel. You do not, or a bikini model, or whatever. I like this graphic here, and I go through this with a lot of my clients in the very first meeting. This is the difference here in red and green between the dieting and the non-dieting mentality. So when you're entrenched in those diets, paleo, Whole30, 21-day fix, Gen-Peg, whatever they are, you might ask yourself how I look, and I would challenge someone to ask themselves, how do you feel? How does this make you feel? How does what you're eating make you feel? How does what you're doing make you feel? You might ask yourselves, especially when I see ones like Weight Watchers, how much food do I get today? In a non-dieting mentality, we want to ask ourselves, how much food do I need today? What am I doing today? What physically am I doing? What do I need fuel for? In dieting mentality, will this make me skinny? Non-dieting, I say, will this nourish me? You can also think about the non-dieting and dieting mentality in terms of exercise. Dieters exercise so they can eat. Non-dieters eat so they can exercise. It's fuel for the body. Dieters, I can eat whatever I want on my cheat day. But non-dieters say I can eat whatever I want every day. Every single day. Dieters say food, at an extreme level, and I definitely see this, food is my worst enemy and my favorite reward. So a lot of emotion associated with that statement there. A non-dieter would say, food is just food. Take the emotions out of it. It's just food. These are very disturbing images. I recognize that. How many of you guys have heard of the Insel Keys study? Probably most of you in this room here in nutrition. It was a seminal study done on starvation, 1944 to 1945. This was done at the University of Minnesota. This was right at the end of World War II here. So their goals of this study, I'm going to read just some of this, was to determine the physiological and psychological effects of severe and prolonged dietary restriction, and also to learn about rehabilitation strategies for these individuals. So they wanted to get some really concrete knowledge about starvation and its effects, but also how to help war relief victims and how to help them rehabilitate. So these were all volunteers. They were called conscientious objectors, and they subjected them for about a year to a diet. How many calories do you think these guys ate per day for about that year? What do you think? 500, 1,600, what else? 700, okay. 1,700. That surprise anybody?
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like.
1,700 calories and they look like that. These are college men, by the way. So, I don't know about you guys, but who's ever heard this 1,200 calorie thing? I don't know where in the heck that came from. So I'm doing a lot of my research on intuitive eating, all of it really. And one of the studies was looking at people's caloric intake, and they threw out anybody's diet records who ate less than 1,300 calories a day because they said this is not sustainable for life. That spoke to me. So these men ate 1,700 calories a day. And at 1,700 calories, their metabolisms decreased, kind of like we saw in The Biggest Loser. So here's another representation of that. They became obsessed with food. They binged, they developed eating disorders, and they lost interest in girls.
Oh.
3 of them became chefs.
3 of them became chefs. They became that obsessed with food. Thank you, John. It became the object of everything they thought about. So we think about how much of our brain, it took up all of their brains. 1,700 calories. Just let that resonate with you for a second. Okay. Something I get from clients sometimes when they're first being introduced to intuitive eating is that it's a free-for-all. I know some people, even in here, may have thought that coming in. Intuitive eating, it's just a free-for-all. Eat whatever you want all the time. It's not like that. I'll just tell you right off the bat. So when I was talking already, and we're going to get into this in a second, about how you feel when you eat, eating like that might feel good for a day or a weekend, or maybe a week on vacation even. I don't know. People have different thresholds for it. But in the long run, it does not feel good to eat like that all the time, you know? Lots of bad things would happen in the way that you feel. So it's about, intuitive eating is about attunement. So eating with attunement and knowing your internal cues. So hunger is the focal point of intuitive eating. I hear clients say to me a lot of times, they come in, I wish I could count how many times people say this. I'm so hungry. It's this terrible problem. I'm hungry all the time. How do I stop being hungry? How many of you guys have worked with clients and heard them say that? Yeah, so hungry. And I tell them, good. You're hungry, good. Thank you. Because we're going to use that. Hunger is good. Hunger helps us know when to eat. It helps us know how much to eat. Hunger makes food taste good. So we're eating when we're hungry. Food tastes good. So the hunger scale, I'll explain this one to you guys because it is such a focal point. So in the middle of the hunger scale, we have a point of 5, which is neutral. So you're kind of neither hungry nor full. You're not really thinking about food. As we go down on the scale, a 3, you're kind of first starting to develop those pangs of hunger in your stomach. 2, you're a little over hungry. Or I'm sorry, 3, they're a little bit stronger. 4 is when you first develop them. 3, they're a little stronger. 2, you're kind of over hungry. And then 1 and 0 is you're faint, you're lightheaded, you have headache maybe, really don't feel good. As we go up the scale, 6, you're just satisfied, you're not hungry anymore. 7 is the point where you're completely satisfied. It's kind of that, I could take another bite, but I don't have to. Do you guys know what that feels like? Yeah. And 8 is full. 9, and not uncomfortably so, but you're full. 9 and 10, not so good. 10 is like post Thanksgiving. Maybe, if you do that. One thing to note about this scale, there's a lot of grace in intuitive eating. All parts of this scale are normal eating. So I talk a lot with my clients about what normal eating is, and you'll see on the back side of the page here, you have a normal eating quote. We'll talk about that later. All parts of this scale are normal. Occasionally, you're going to be running on empty. Occasionally, you're going to eat way too much and not feel good. Most of the time with intuitive eating, though, I encourage my clients to stay between a 3 and a 7. Kind of somewhere in the middle of the scale. Because what usually happens when we let ourselves get too far on this end, what do? We go all the way to the side. Yeah, exactly. So we tend to eat too much. We don't have the ability to think rationally about what we're eating. We eat really quickly. So if we keep ourselves kind of around the 3-4 range when we start eating, we're able to be mindful about it and think about it. I had a client one time. She came in to me and we just started talking about intuitive eating. I'll share this with you because it made me laugh. And she was like, we've been talking about the fact that I can kind of eat whatever I want, but we were talking specifically about her eating environment. So eating at home a little bit more often where she can be more thoughtful and mindful, and she had a really long day. And so she's a professor, but not here, at a different university. And she was like, Minnie, you'd be so proud of me, so proud of me. I went all day, I had this work event, there was appetizers everywhere, and I was so hungry, but I didn't eat anything. I didn't eat a single food. I went home, and you said it was okay, so I ate some of those Jenny Craig ice cream bars. So you'd be so proud of me, that was so good. And I laughed because, we laughed together, I should say. Because what I explained to her is that I want you to use your hunger to tell you when to eat. I would have advocated for you at that meal, at that dinner there, to eat what's there. Listen to your body. The cool thing about intuitive eating is that no matter where you are or what you're eating, you can use it because you can eat whatever you want. So you can sit there at an event and say, okay, I'm feeling, maybe I'm 3, and maybe you get to a 7 or an 8. You can use it anywhere, anytime on vacation. It's really cool like that. So I thought that was a funny one. I'd like to, so with hunger, and the reason that I feel so confident that it works well is because we were all born with the ability to manage our own hunger. So, are you guys familiar with the California Baby Behavior Campaign? You guys, Susan, I'm sure Susan's heard of it, yeah. So, I used to work for California WIC, so we were one of the pilot organizations for the Baby Behavior Campaign. So this is where some of these images came from. But we were born able to manage our own hunger, fullness, and eat enough to sustain our bodies. So you can see with babies have early cues. They just start stirring. They are mouth opening maybe a little bit, kind of rooting is what it's called, turning their head. So they're kind of early hunger. Maybe they're like 3 or 4 at that point, if we think about our hunger scale. Mid-cues, I'm really hungry. They might be stretching, increasing their movement, hands to their mouth. How many of you guys have spent time around a baby? They do that. They suck on their hands, right? It's a hunger cue. Late cues, calm me, then feed me. So they're crying, lots of movement, maybe even turning red. This is where they're like 2 months on the hunger scale. We were born with this ability. Every single one of us was born with the ability to manage our hunger, fullness, and how much we need to eat. On the other end of things, if you've been around a baby, what do they do when they're done eating?
Stop.
What do they do? Stop. They stop. If they're nursing, they just stop. If they're eating food, they might start playing with it, throwing it even. They're done. Anything but eating, pretty much. So what sabotages this in us if we're all born in this? Rigid meal times, and some of this we kind of can't change, you know. I don't know if any of you guys have like elementary school or middle school age kids, but some of them are eating at 10:30 in the morning. I can't imagine they're hungry by then. So we've got these meal times. There's not always a lot we can do about it. Dieting rules as we get older, and as young as 4th grade, we're seeing in a lot of studies here, people are imposing dieting rules. Children are. The Clean Plate Club. How many of you guys were part of the Clean Plate Club when you were kids? A lot of people, yeah, you're not alone. So when we follow the Clean Plate Club, you know, we're pushing past those cues of fullness. We're telling our kids that they shouldn't listen to their own bodies, and that they should eat everything that's on their plate. And then that carries with us into adulthood. So that can tend to sabotage their ability to find hunger and fullness. The good news is that you can get back to this. I have worked with so many clients who usually I'll have them start tracking their hunger and fullness to start, like food blogging. So instead of doing any like, you know, MyFitnessPal or tracking, I don't hate those programs, but instead of thinking about calories or anything like that, we'll track how hungry or full that they are. And then they start to listen a little bit more. I've even worked with clients and had them start doing yoga or meditation, so they can just start listening to their internal cues. Something I want you guys to try really quick. Without touching your pulse here or on your wrist here, how many of you guys can tell when your heart is beating? Can you? Okay. So that is actually, it was really interesting. And one of the studies that I looked at with intuitive eating, that's how they measured interoceptive awareness, was whether the people could perceive their own heartbeat. So I'll do that with clients sometimes too, just to get a kind of idea. So it's really just getting in touch with all of your internal cues, which your body tells you lots of things, more than hunger and fullness. So kind of being able to listen to it in all fronts is helpful with intuitive eating. So I want to take a minute and talk about satisfaction. Satisfaction is the hub of intuitive eating. We talked about hunger and fullness and satisfaction. So what I hear from clients a lot of times, and how many of you, you can raise your hand if you felt this way before, have felt that satisfaction and fullness are the same thing? Any of you guys felt that way before? Yeah, definitely some nods. I've been there too, for sure. But what I explain to them is that satisfaction has a whole lot more to do than just fullness. Fullness is just one aspect for that. And we talk about mindful eating, and I don't like mindless eating. I just don't like that term. So we'll talk about distracted eating. Mindful eating, or paying attention to our food. We notice the taste, the texture, the aroma, what it smells like, how hot or cold it is, and also the volume of the food, how much we're eating. You might also focus on the people that you're with. So the point of this is that your brain is connected with the experience. So you're increasing your satisfaction because your brain is actually experiencing what you're doing. Distracted eating, on the other hand, you might be focusing on the TV or computer, working with your lunch. I know that's hard. I can definitely guilty of that one too. Multitasking, and food, honestly, is the last priority of your focus. So, you know, you've done this a million billion times in your life. So you're going to be paying attention to the TV or whatever else is going on. The point of this and why this is harmful is because your brain missed out on the experience. Your body experienced it, but your brain missed out. So you might have decreased satisfaction, and a lot of times what I see with my clients is that they overeat. Maybe because they ate too fast, maybe because they weren't experiencing it the whole time, and even later on in the day sometimes they'll come in and say, well, I ate lunch, why am I hungry? I ate this big lunch, and I'll ask them, and they were working through lunch. I say, you know, you may not have, actually your brain may not have experienced that, so your brain is still looking to connect with that experience with eating. So again, a little more about the how. And I wanted to say, I had a lot of content, so I have a space for questions at the end, but if you have any burning questions within the presentation, please raise your hand. I'm happy to answer questions. Let's move on here. Oh, Doug the Pug. Doug is my favorite. I grew up with 2 pugs, so I particularly love him. But Doug, how many of you guys follow Doug on Facebook or Instagram or something? Hello, Doug. Doug, if you guys have seen this before, Doug honors his feelings using food. He really does. He eats for emotional reasons. He doesn't listen to his fullness. He eats whenever he wants, kind of all the time. Doug loves to eat. Pugs love to eat. But with, so one of the constructs of intuitive eating is eating for physical reasons rather than emotional reasons. So it's one of the 4 areas that you looked at on your survey there. The intuitive eating says we need to honor our feelings without using food. Most of the time. Sometimes, and this is the thing about the grace with intuitive eating, sometimes we're going to eat because we're bored, sad, lonely, whatever it is. That's normal. That's a normal part of being a human being. I just want to say that. All of these are normal parts of being a human being. Eating past fullness, getting too hungry sometimes. But most of the time, we want to honor our feelings without using food and eat only when we're really physically needing to. So what I ask my clients when they're eating, so most of the time when you're eating when you're not actually hungry, most of the time there's a need that's not met. So what are you feeling now? What are you needing now? So how many of you guys have been in a situation where you're studying all night or working on a paper all night and you find yourself just eating? How many of you guys have been there? I've definitely been there. Yeah, for sure. So what else, I'm going to ask you guys, what else do you think you could eat at that point in time, other than food? Sleep. Thank you. What else?
I'll go with water.
Water, okay. Hydration maybe. Yeah, what else? What else might you need? A break? A break, maybe. You know, I hear that a lot of times from students who are studying and they just eat, you know, do you need a break from studying? Do you need to go take a walk? And I'm not even saying like you have to go do physical activity, but just something else to occupy your brain space. Yes.
So Amanda, is there a difference between like mental hunger and physical hunger? Because I know we're all in very mental spaces all the time.
Yes.
And so are there foods or things to do when your brain is just like hungry?
Yeah.
Maybe my body doesn't.
Thank you for bringing that up. So do you guys know the difference between hunger, appetite, and cravings? We talked about this in our Healthy Youth class, so some of our nutritionists and our people will be familiar. Hunger is what we've been talking about. So that biological feeling in your stomach, in your body of needing to eat. Appetite is brain hunger. So we have that too. What might stimulate brain hunger or appetite? Besides physical.
Food Network.
Food Network. Yeah. What we see on
Guilty
TV.
as charged.
What else? What else?
Smell.
Someone else eating? Yes. Someone else eating, maybe even a family member eating? Yeah, so seeing food, grocery store, walking by. Our environment for food is so toxic in this country. It really is. I mean, there's food everywhere. We're supposed to eat all the time, according to what we see. So yeah, so our brains can feel that hunger too, even when we're not physically hungry. Cravings are a whole other thing. Cravings are usually for a specific food, but it's not usually because you need that specific food. Usually with cravings too, I like to look with clients into what need is not being met. What are you not doing for yourself or giving to yourself that you actually need? Does that answer your question, Elisa? Yeah, so that definitely is a real thing. So distraction, support, self-care, you might need to, so there's kind of 3 options you have when feeling like eating in the absence of hunger. You could it's always an option you could choose to eat anyway. That's option 1. Option 2, you can distract yourself. So go read a book, knit, sew, walk, exercise, whatever it is. Option 3, and probably the best one of all, is to really get to the root of the problem. You know, what is it that is causing you to feel that way at that time? So those are kind of the steps that I take with clients. Maybe we're going to distract this time, and next time, or maybe you can journal on this, you know. I also, when I do intuitive eating with clients, I'm always recommending that they're working with a therapist. Because there's so much of eating that's so emotional, and that's not always inside of the scope of a registered dietitian. That was the thing that surprised me most about becoming a dietitian, is how much counseling and psychological. I wish I had a degree in counseling, or that I was a therapist or something like that, because you're people's therapist most of the time. But yeah, so I have them. I always encourage them to be working with a therapist to kind of be healing that side of themselves too. So this might be the stickiest part of my presentation, but I'm going to go there. Food addiction. So I hear from my clients a lot of times that they're addicted to food. How many of you guys have heard that or felt that before? Addicted to food, yeah. Carbs, sweets, you name it. So I'm not sure that I actually believe that food addiction exists. I don't really know. You might think that's crazy, but I don't really think that it does. So what I hear from clients is that dopamine, they're reading the news, the dopamine is released in their brains when they eat foods that are bad for them. So they must be addicted to them, because dopamine is an addiction hormone. We must be addicted to those foods if those hormones are being released. Okay, I hear you. So all of these images here up on the screen, we see a mother with her newborn baby, we see someone who's listening to music that's clearly pleasurable, clearly good music there, and we see two people, maybe they're in love or happy or whatever. So all of these situations here are scenarios where dopamine is released in the brain. This is research. This is not just me saying this. We have research to show that when mothers are with their babies, when people listen to music that they like, when people are in love, the dopamine is released. So are we addicted to these things? In a pathological way. Are mothers addicted to their babies? Are we addicted to music? Are we addicted to love? I know songs would say that. But maybe we'll leave that one there as that. But I don't think so, at least in a pathological way. We are wired to release those hormones when we're exposed to pleasurable things. And food is a part of pleasure. And that's something that I like to impart to my clients all the time. Regardless of your goals for weight or dieting, you are still a human living in this life, and you deserve to enjoy enjoyable things in life that include food, regardless of what your journey is. And I also think that when people say that they're addicted to food, it gives food a lot more power than it should. I'm addicted to this food, I can't do anything about it. And then that relies on willpower, and we all know that willpower doesn't work, right? Willpower does not work. So what causes us to keep coming back? What do you guys think to these foods? I'm talking about food in particular. Why do people think they're addicted to food? What might they be doing?
They're using it to fulfill whatever they're missing.
Maybe they're using it to fulfill what they're missing. What else might they be doing? What have we been talking about this whole time? Dieting? Maybe they're dieting. So dieting strikes again. Dieting is the gateway for altered reward pathways in the brain. And this has been studied as well. How many of you guys read this article? Yeah, you guys, so I'll explain a little bit. This was in Vogue. Mom here, Darylyn Weiss, and her daughter, she's 7. So in the original article, I'm just going to read some of these statements just because they're honestly heartbreaking. I once reproachfully derived B, is her name, of her dinner after learning that her observation of French Heritage Day at school involved nearly 800 calories of brie, filet mignon, baguette, and chocolate. I stopped letting her enjoy Pizza Fridays when she admitted to adding corn salad as a side dish one week. She also admitted to snatching hot chocolate from B's hands and pouring it away after discovering that Starbucks barista had topped it with whipped cream without her permission.
Oh my God.
That is heartbreaking to me. How about you guys? That's heartbreaking. So what we see in the research here, we'll talk about children and teens for a second. When children and teens are put on a diet, they binge. They have what we call a last supper phenomenon to eating. So they eat a lot of food because they don't know when they're going to get to eat again. They develop eating disorders. This to me sounds just like a recipe for an eating disorder. That's what it sounds like to me. And ironically, what goes up? What do you think? Their weight. Their weight goes up. Their weight doesn't go down, it goes up. Yeah. So for me, I think that this mother and daughter need to make peace with food. So we also see with chronic dieters, we see the same thing. So with chronic dieting, food is consistently exciting. It's novel because we're restricting foods and then we're going back to this. We call it the restriction overeating cycle. Michelle Mays is another, she's a physician who's also written about, if you guys have heard of her, the restriction overeating cycle. Very similar kind of concepts to intuitive eating. I like the intuitive eating approach just because I think it's a very, for all you science people in the room, it's a very strong construct with a lot of research behind it. So that's why I like to use specifically intuitive eating. But that's part of a non-dieting, adaptive eating. Health at every size might be another one that falls in that category. Kind of all parts of the same approach here. And so they're really, all these restricted foods are really exciting. They don't have what's called habituation to the foods. So they want them all the time. And also, when you're not habituated to a food, you tend to eat more of it. So that's a phenomenon called sensory-specific satiety. So sensory-specific satiety, tongue twister, tells us that when we're not accustomed to a food, then we tend to eat more of it to get the same amount of satisfaction as a food that we eat all the time. So we see this a lot on like vacations and things like that. People tell me they might overeat, and they might not be habituated to those foods. And the same thing happens when we diet. Even foods we were habituated to before, all of a sudden they're novel, new, and exciting, and we want to eat them all the time in large amounts. So when people say they're addicted to food, are you dieting? That's usually my first question. This is also a disturbing image, I recognize that. It used to be acceptable in China to painfully bind people's feet. You guys heard of that before? Yeah. I think most of us would agree that this is an extremely inhumane practice. If you've seen some of the pictures of what this does to these women's feet, and I spared you from those images. But they're deformed. It's so sad. So most of us agree that that's inhumane. But why do, sorry, why do we expect our bodies to be any different? Intuitive eating says to accept your genetic blueprint. So for many people, and this has again been studied, the genetic impact on weight can be as high as 80 to 85%. Do you guys know that? 80 to 85%. Height is something like 90 to 95. Weight can be as high as 80 to 85, and it varies some. There's a little more variance in that. There's only so much we can do. And I do recognize that that might be the hardest part of all of this. Because again, we go back to that thin obsessed culture. And we have to be that thin, and we can all do it, and everybody's capable of it. But for most people, that's not the reality of what can ever happen for us. And I don't say that to be like discouraging, but just to help people to know that where they're at is maybe just where they should be. And we can work on the behaviors and becoming more healthy. But really, weight is not that outcome. Weight's not the indicator that I look for. Yes, Leslie?
So how do we reconcile that with this change in a relatively few decades of an increasing number of overweight and obese people?
Well, you know, I think that I don't disagree that that's happening. You know, that's a big question. How do we reconcile that? Well, actually, that's kind of where I was going next with this. This is a Wordle that we did in the Nutrition Center. Last semester, was the last semester that we did it? So we took from all of our students for Body Image Acceptance Week what they loved about their bodies. So we made a Wordle out of it. This is just a starting point. I think we need more of this. I think we need to talk. We need to be vocal about how we feel about our bodies, you know, and also to stop fat talk, honestly. Like you've heard that if you hear something, say something. Say something if you hear fat shaming or if you hear fat talk. I mean, maybe it's my gender age group, but I hear it all the time. I'll walk into a room with my friends and they'll be bashing their own bodies. You know, my stomach looks terrible, my butt, my hips, whatever. You know, and we bash ourselves. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to somebody else. Most of this has just been made acceptable in our culture. And Leslie, I don't know totally what the answer is to that. I wish I did. I really wish I did because it totally breaks my heart. But I think it starts, you know, with ourselves and what we say about ourselves too. And going back to that, you know, being kind to yourself and, you know, knowing that you are exactly where you should be. I think also we need to focus more on what our bodies can do rather than how they look. You know, and that's going to help us to think about food as fuel for our bodies rather than something we need to restrict or stop eating. So, that's a hard one though. Really hard. That's the hardest. Exercise. I'll briefly touch on this one. So exercise also has a place in intuitive eating. Physical activity is extraordinarily important also for intuitive eating, for everybody. Our bodies, I think our bodies are made to move. We're not made to be sitting at a desk all the time. I truly believe that. Exercise, I love this quote, exercise is a celebration of what your body can do. It's not a punishment for what you ate. It's just not. Exercise, feel the difference. If you like to go and cut it at the gym and really, work hard, great, fine. If you like to run marathons, great. If you like to do that. But the idea of intuitive eating is that you do what you love to do. Dance, go rock climbing, ride your bike. And it kind of takes the guilt out of whether you do it or miss a day or not. You do things because your body likes to move, and you do things that you love to do. So we talk about physical activity a lot, definitely. It's just not in the sense that you might think of. I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. The last one, ironically, that I want to go over is honoring your health with gentle nutrition. And gentle nutrition is about being kind to yourself with all these food rules. This was actually a more recently added principle to the set. People were feeling like there needed to be something about honoring your health with eating foods that are good for your bodies. That's still a part of intuitive eating. So earlier when I was saying this isn't a free-for-all, we still care about what foods can do for your body and what fuels your body well. Even though I'm a dietitian, I try as hard as I can to introduce this concept later for people. It's because that's all they want to focus on. What do I eat? Give me a meal plan. And I say I want to focus on how and why first. And once that feels good to you, then we can introduce a little bit of what. So as a dietitian, it's a pretty awesome mix of skills to have to be able to do intuitive eating with people, because you get to talk about the how and the why and the what that you eat. So, I'm aware that like an apple and an apple pie are nutritionally different. They are. They provide different nutrients for your body. And the apple pie does provide nutrients for your body, whether or not you want to think that. But emotionally, they should be the same. Emotionally, an apple pie and an apple should be the same. We shouldn't have all of these emotions tied up in them. It's just food. It's just food.
Amanda, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay.
Because I think there's so much of our culture wrapped up into our food, and
Sure.
special foods and special meals, and foods that are for special times, not
Sure.
every day.
Sure.
And so I would really disagree with the apple pie thing,
Mhm.
because I will enjoy a local apple in season, or
Mhm.
another apple out of season, perhaps every day. But I don't know that I would necessarily, I think the specialness of apple pie would disappear if I had it every day.
Sure. But that's not what your body needs every day either. That wouldn't make you feel very good to eat that every day.
Right. Or even if it was a bite of apple pie, I just think
Yeah.
it would,
Lose its appeal.
yeah. I mean, so for me, there's the specialness of some foods are wrapped up into my culture, my experience.
Sure.
And they're more special because I don't eat them every day.
I totally understand that. I totally agree with you on that. One thing that I've had come to me once before was somebody who was fasting for religious reasons. And that kind of came to me. They said, well, what do I do about that? I'm really hungry. And I think we have to talk about the motivation that comes behind that. The motivation behind fasting, for your religion or Ramadan or whatever it is, it comes from your heart. It comes from your soul. There's good reason behind that. It's not about weight loss or dieting. So, I totally agree with you, Leslie. Food is a part of our culture. It's a part of, so there's emotions in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. That's very important as well. So just as a little wrap up here, intuitive eaters, they rely on their hunger and fullness cues. They give themselves unconditional permission to eat with attunement, so making sure they eat foods that feel good. Eat for physical reasons, not emotional, and they're aware of what their bodies need to feel good and to perform well. So they choose foods that feel good for their bodies. Intuitive eaters trust their bodies to know when, how much, and what to eat because they listen to what their bodies need. So ask yourself, do you have these characteristics? We did that survey there. The survey that I gave you was validated by Tracy Tilka at the Ohio State University in thousands of college men and women. It hasn't been tested in super diverse socioeconomic groups, or honestly in a very diverse age group, but it is validated in men and women. I use it with all of my clients. So this is something that you can kind of assess for yourself. So I'd like to wrap up just by reading. I'm going to read this quote because I think it's really, really good. Have you guys heard of Ellen Sauter before? She is a recognized professional in the parent-child feeding relationship, as well as a lot of these kind of non-dieting principles. She calls it competent eating. Intuitive eating, competent eating, that's all kind of part of it. So normal eating. Normal eating is going to the table hungry and eating until you're satisfied. It's being able to choose foods you like and eat it and truly get enough of it. Keep it on there. Not just stop because you think you should. Normal eating is being able to give some thought to food selection so you get nutritious food, but not being so weary and restricted that you miss out on enjoyable food. Normal eating is giving yourself permission to eat sometimes because you're happy, sad, or bored, or just because it feels good. Normal eating is mostly 3 meals a day, or 4, or 5, or it can be choosing to munch along the way. It's leaving some cookies on the plate because you know you can have some again tomorrow, or it's eating more because they taste so wonderful. Maybe they're hot out of the oven. Normal eating is overeating at times, feeling stuffed and uncomfortable, and it can be undereating at times and wishing you had more. Normal eating is trusting your body to make up for your mistakes in eating. It takes up some of your time and attention, we talked about this, but keeps this place as only one important area of your life. In short, normal eating is flexible. It varies in response to your hunger, your schedule, your proximity to food, your feelings, your culture, all of those things. It's flexible. There's no rigid rules. That's what we want to get rid of. No scale or diet would ever know your thoughts, your feelings, or what satisfies you. You have to rely on what's internal for that. You're the expert on your body, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. So as just a little ending here, what I'd like you guys to do is take a look at the surveys that you filled out at the beginning here, and just star maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 3 of the areas that you feel like you really want to work on going forward. And while you're doing that, I'll take any other questions you guys have. Yeah, Alicia. I know it's almost 1, so if you have to go.
You gave a great presentation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, with a lot of the dieting approaches, I know that people like having the meetings or like that network and that community.
Sure.
That's part of it. And I
Sure.
was wondering what kind of community intuitive eating offers to people. Like, because I know, like, my mom's part of Weight Watchers, and
Sure.
Sometimes I'm like, well, I could give you that advice. Whatever, to each their own.
Alicia, that's really important. Social support, regardless of the approach, is something we know is very important for long-term success. So on the Intuitive Eating website, I know there is an online community there. Michelle Mays, the one who wrote those books, she has groups kind of all over the country, people who lead groups in the non-dieting approach. It's small, it's growing, so I think we need more intuitive eating professionals to be able to lead these groups. Maybe we should start with the nutrition center. That's really cool. I think we need more of that for sure. Thanks. Yes.
Are there some other cultures that aren't so obsessed with youth as America? Because I'm finding as a 55-year-old woman, my clothing size has changed 6 different sizes in my lifetime.
Sure.
You go from being an adolescent to a woman, and then you're pregnant, and you lose weight, and then you're an older woman. So even at 55, I don't know, people don't know what normal, what should a 55-year-old woman look like? My mom's 80-something, and she's having a lot of problems with body image, and she's beating herself up. Because I don't think we as a culture know what it's okay to look like as a woman and a man at these different ages and stages of our lives. And to me, the visuals that we're bombarded with every day throughout our lives, whether you're a 5-year-old beauty pageant, it's like, it's sick, the images we see. So is there another culture that doesn't bombard their people with these images of having to look youthful? Because that's what we're all trying to do. Is I want to look young. I want to look like these 20-year-olds. It's like, it's not going to happen.
So I don't know. Can anyone else answer that question, if there's other cultures?
Like,
that-
is there a Mediterranean diet or a Mediterranean culture that looks
that
okay?
doesn't-
And
I mean, I know in a lot of like African societies, you know, bigger is the attractive ideal. I mean, I know that. You know, I had a friend who lived in Ethiopia, and she's an American. She was living in Burundi in Ethiopia, and she would always say to her friends, "Well, I'm going to try to lose weight." They'd say, "No, don't have fun. No, you're so beautiful," you know. And so, I mean, still it was kind of a little bit into the looks, but on the other perspective, yeah, I would love to answer that question.
Move to an island.
We can emulate them.
yeah, I know, go to an island.
Yeah. No, but at least I think that's the biggest challenge we have, is the culture that we're in with this. I think all of us can be a part of it, in making changes, I really do. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you so much, this was wonderful.
sure, thank you.
I run a nonprofit organization, it's a sort of adolescent girls empowerment.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we think a lot about how we talk about nutrition with them.
Yeah.
I'm curious at what age you feel like introducing these principles is appropriate and how that would look.
I think children and adolescents, I mean, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think all of these are positive approaches. I think they can be used with young ones as well as adults. There's not a lot, there's some research behind intuitive eating principles with children, not as much because it's a newer theory and construct, but there is some, and the results are just as positive in children and teens as they are in adults, especially in teens. Teens, there are quite a few studies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. I think with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. If you all would like to stay and
Yeah.
stay in touch with Amanda, she'll be around. Yeah, let's go and give her a hand.